What have we got here? This is something a bit out of the ordinary for me. It's if you think in the spirit of H.G. Wells, we'll be all right. Otherwise, it all looks rather amateurish and a bit haphazard. It is in a way. Essentially, what's happened is that last weekend was a rainy weekend, and I had my son just before he started back at kindergarten. Well, it's the first time he's going to kindergarten. And I was at a bit of a loss of what to do with him. Sometimes he just likes to go for a ride in the car. I was trying not to play with him too much, to acclimatise him to moving away from me. He's been with me for a month, playing with me almost every day, and not war games yet, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll get there. Anyway, so I decided to kill two birds with one stone and drive into Rome and visit a toy soldier shop, which I visited once before and I knew often sells off cheap magazines and so forth, just to get some light wargaming reading for myself. And while I was there, I picked up a rule set. It was sold to me for €5. You can't read that very well. It's Koenig, Krieg, which is King's War, or better translation would be War of the Kings. It's a rule set for around the 7 Years' War. That's the sort of inspiration for it. Around that time, it says rules of clay for battles of the age of Frederick the Great, 1710, I think that is, to 1786. It's quite a light rules set. It's miniatures wargaming. This is the whole point. It's miniatures wargaming, not something I usually do, but I love tactical board wargames, and miniatures wargaming is kind of in that vein. And I guess sometimes, recently I picked up something cheap downloaded from Wargame Vault called Micro Napoleonics. So it's essentially cardboard flats that it's just pieces of cardboard with military symbols on them depicting the units, and then you move them around on a table rather than on the hex grid. And it had some nice old 1976 style rules. I really enjoyed playing it. So I thought I'd give this a go. It gives me a bit of a breather from the usual hex and counter games, where essentially you've got lots and lots of rules that are mechanical rules for dealing with movement in hexes and so forth like that, facing, zones of control, etc., etc. And miniatures rules, at least a few that I've encountered, are very refreshing in that way, in that it's just kind of like, okay, there's a unit, it moves 6 inches, 5 inches, whatever, and that's it. You can move it that way or that way. In fact, here it says, I think it's a 60-degree arc in front. But, you know, it's all a bit rough and ready, and I fancied a bit of that freshness. And so I got my kids' building blocks out, and I've built a terrain. That's also a nice thing with miniatures rules, is a lot of them, you can get scenarios, of course, but a lot of it is about just kind of do your own. So I used the do your own setup rules in here. Let me just quickly flick through this while we're here. So here's all the rules. What do we have? We've got Chapter 1, Introduction, Chapter 2, Army. So that's a little bit of introduction. As you can see, I've already written notes because it's about basing, how many figures you have on a base, and then how many bases you have in a formation, which might be a regiment or a battalion or a brigade in the case of this rule set. So essentially you can have formed infantry, unformed infantry, i.e. skirmishers, cavalry or artillery. They have a certain frontage, and then you have 4-man stands for formed infantry, 2-man stands for skirmishers and cavalry, and guns like that. And then I quickly downloaded, on Board Game Geek, I just set up a thread saying, hey folks, does anyone know where I can get some war game flats easily and someone suggested Wargame Download. I went there and there's a chap that did some very nice, essentially they're obviously photographs of actual miniatures, and they were in colour, so that there would have been a green background to that, no line across the middle. I drew that myself to indicate that this is a cavalry figure. Normally it should be two men, two figures to a base, as we just read, but it appears to me that most cavalry, that either in line or in column, they're going to be in depths of 2 at minimum. So I thought I'd just leave those together, because obviously these flats weren't built for this rule set. But anyway, as I was saying, these are all in beautiful colour. My colour printer's not working, or my printer's not working on colour. So I posted out the Austrians I printed out the Austrians in sepia and the Prussians in blue. The little yellow things there is just completely unhistorical, etc., etc. But these are just flags, because a certain number of bases have to be flag units. The Austrians just white flags. And I just had to clarify how many gunners there are here, because for instance one of these units is going to be a 3-gun unit, so each figure, the gun just represents its guns, but each figure represents a number of guns. So I quickly brought up an army list, mainly kind of based on the figures I had here. I had to try and work out, like, what sort of cavalry are these? Are they grenadiers? Are they dragoons? Are they cuirassiers? Are they... I have no idea, so I just kind of cobbled something together and wrote some notifications here. So that tells me these are cuirassiers. The Austrians also have some cuirassiers. The Austrians have these Grenz units, which are essentially light cavalry that can skirmish, and the Prussians have a Freikorps, and they also have Hussars, which can also skirmish. I don't know how light they are as cavalry, but they can skirmish as well. So back to the rulebook. So we got the armies, chapter 3, unit capabilities, formations, and then here, chapter 4, starting the battle at the battlefield. So it shows you, you divide your table or play surface up into this. You roll, there's a little table. The rule set comes with a A4 sheet, double-sided. A lot of it's just for setup, not all of it's for play. So you roll on the terrain table to see how many types of each terrain you get. You decide beforehand, is it open terrain or obstructed? And you also roll to see where roads are between towns and board edges. So you have small hills, small forests, small towns, large towns, streams and roads. So I rolled that all out and distributed them randomly. You sort of randomly discover the zone and then put them down where you want. And I think it basically goes in that there's 2 basic types of battle. There's positional and maneuver. Positional is there's a defender and an attacker, in which case the attacker sets up the terrain and the defender chooses where to go. And in the maneuver, I think you both set it up, and no, either of you sets it up and the other one chooses where they will position themselves. In this case I chose a positional battle, so we're going to have the Austrians who are defending. Oh, I just realised I should be doing this in this format or else it comes out terrible on YouTube. So Austrians defending, and they have to be set up on their half of the table, anywhere within their half. And then the Prussians who are attacking cannot set up on their half of the table, but nowhere within 2 feet. That's 2 feet of any of the defenders. So I better just quickly tell you what's going on in terms of terrain. So maybe I can use my little pointer here. So these are forests or woods. Each one's supposed to be a 2-inch by 2-inch square with a tree in it. Each of these coloured areas are towns, and each kind of squarish block is meant to be 2 inch by 2 inch again, and you can have a certain number of units in each 2 inch by 2 inch block. And then these are hills. There was no large hills, so these are just small hills scattered about. So you can see there's quite a lot of open terrain over there, a lot of open terrain here, and essentially what the Austrians decided to do was to take this to protect their flanks, so they're ignoring that side of the field, and set up a line of skirmishers here. Their main forces are here, and then also using these towns and forests as some flank protection. I believe this flank protection will be quite useful because you can see not many units can get through that gap easily. You have to break down into column formation. So that's their setup. I should say a quick word. These are not the units, these are hidden unit representational markers. So you get some indication of what's under them, but nothing more. Skirmishers set up as units because skirmishers will screen and scout out the other hidden markers. So the Prussians are just, we can see this is the backs, so we've got horse guns coming up here. But essentially what they've decided to do is, I'll tell you in a minute because I just want to finish going through the rules set. Okay. We come to it here. So you start the battle, you set up the terrain, and then you come to deployment. So the Austrians have deployed, and as you said, you can have hidden units, you can have dummy units. So for instance, the Prussians don't know, but this is a dummy. So they look covered, but they're not as covered as they might be. You roll for dummies based on the initiative of your commander. Initiative goes from 0 to 3, and you roll 1 die, and that's for each point of initiative. That's the number of dummy units you have. So for example, Frederick could have potentially 18 dummy units. And you can see in this, the Austrians had, I think, 11 real units, and the Prussians had 10 real units, or the other way around, I can't remember which. And the Austrians only got 1 dummy, and the Prussians actually only got 2 dummies. That's their dummies there. Then what we do is we go to manoeuvre. So this is the pre-battle section, and essentially in a positional battle, the attacker gets 6 rounds of manoeuvre and the defender gets 5, so the attacker gets 1 round of manoeuvre, or he could end it sooner, but basically he gets the last round of manoeuvre up to 6. Slightly different in a manoeuvre battle. Then anyone within 15 inches of another, figured from the front of the centre of your front to anywhere on their front, anyone in line of sight is revealed at the end of attacker defender manoeuvre. Then you could also pin. So essentially, if you go within 6 inches of an enemy unit during, this is still the deployment, then they are pinned. So it's interesting. So yes, there's some manoeuvre, but you can pin the enemy, except skirmishers units are not pinned. Skirmishers can lock each other, and cavalry can push back infantry skirmishers. Now, another very interesting bit about this deployment portion in this rule set is called detached corps. So in a positional battle, blah blah blah, in a manoeuvre battle, it's similar, but slightly different thing. The attacker is allowed to have units manoeuvre off the table. In a manoeuvre battle, you can both do it. So what that means is that the attacker chooses an edge, which is essentially a corner, the right or the left, and then every round of manoeuvre they can move the specified number of inches. So it's 5 inches for artillery and infantry, and 12 inches for cavalry, you can move them up that edge. So these could essentially move 30 inches up there. Now you can see, depending on the size of your table or layout area, potentially, if it's quite short, I could move up here and round here. Especially if I had cavalry, that would be well possible, and do a really nice flank attack. So that's what the Prussians decided to do. They sent one set of muskets and their 2 horse gun batteries up there. So I think those horse guns are going to be galloping up, and will start perturbing the Austrians from the rear, or at least the flank. I'm not putting too much thought in this, but just a quick bit of fun. Then the other portion of the Prussian attack is essentially 3 columns here. The thought being, this is a diversionary column, so there's 2 dummies, but the actual grenadiers are there to sort of, essentially they're in reserve, but they will back up if there's any sort of flanking manoeuvres, so they will protect that flank. So they will be moving up around here as a diversionary, sort of pinning, pinning forces, not necessarily literally pinning by the rules, but pinning in the sense that they'll say, okay, we better not manoeuvre out of here because he's manoeuvring around there. And there's a middle column which isn't going to so much, it's going to essentially go to the middle and pin them. That's not, again, just pinning as per the deployment rules, but pinning as in the battle. So it wants to pin the main force there, but then the main attack is going to be via this column, which has got 2 lots of light guns and muskets coming up around here, and they're aiming to attack on the flank through the clear space here, and then hopefully with the benefit of these flanking ones, they'll sort of roll up the Austrians that way. So that's the plan of attack. What have we got? We've got, so in the middle column we've got muskets, light guns, cuirassiers, so that's heavy cavalry, and more muskets. Really those muskets should be on this column. They'll join that column when they can, but you can see there's only so much space. That essentially that was all the space. Oh no, because the middle of the board's there. So this was the whole section in which the whole of the Prussians could set up on my table, which is long and narrow. So that's the plan of attack. That was vaguely the plan of defence. We've got half a Fusilier brigade there. Oh yeah, sorry, each of these is a brigade or a battalion or a cavalry regiment. There's a brigade of Fusiliers, heavy guns here, dragoons here, they're going to go up and take the hill. There's some light guns here. We've got reserve grenadiers, cuirassiers, and some reserve artillery here. And as you saw, that was a dummy. So the cuirassiers and the grenadiers are in reserve, and this artillery is ready to be deployed, maybe in this section, depending on where the main line of attack is. There is something that I found out in the rules later, is that, didn't sort of read too closely first up, is that you can actually have guns attached to regiments. So this is a brigade with attached guns as one of your hidden units. So I could have distributed these guns, say here and here, or these guns here and here, had another, I don't know, Fusilier unit up there or something like that. Sorry, that's grenadiers, isn't it? But never mind, I've done it this way. We can always move them later. This is a dummy, so maybe the infantry or cavalry. Can it be artillery? Actually, why not? Didn't say that earlier. So my dummies I didn't quite mark like that, maybe. No, but you see, that's the thing. That's why I didn't get in the rules. It says, over here it says that the dummies, dummy cards, which look just like a real hidden unit, which I sort of in my imagination that meant they were blank, so you didn't know what, or they were all the same on the face up side. But here they show the dummy, they show all the cards having the symbols on them, so the dummy would necessarily have to have a symbol too, wouldn't it? But I've chosen it as a bit more of fog of war, so looks like that's cavalry, but it might actually be nothing, or it might actually, yes. Anyway. Okay, then the next chapter is chapter 5, the battle, and we have command. We've got some illustration of play in here. Got movement, fire, etc., etc. Here's tables, which I showed you earlier. Then there's a nice glossary stroke index, so that's a whole page of glossary. Sorry, 2 sides of glossary. Then the rules continue. Exploitation, morale, army morale, nice picture. So I've just given you these highlights to give you an idea. There's overall army morale, that's really what's going to happen in the game, is one of the armies will break, and they're given, as it's quoted here, they're given a golden bridge to leave. It's the sort of gentlemanly era. It's like, okay, you realise you're broken, we'll let you go. It's not so much the sort of route of maybe ancient battles. Exploitation is essentially after melee from charges, if they're successful, you can go on and have another one, so in that way you can roll up the line. Then chapter 6 is the appendix with some optional rules, etc., etc., and then we go on to the historical organizations, and some notes for the tables, and then it gives you points, costs, morale values, etc., etc., and notes for each nationality: Prussia, Austria, France, Russia, the Reichsarmy, Turkey, America, Sweden, Spain, Great Britain, Austrian allies, Prussian allies, etc., etc., Italian states, Poland, Denmark, Netherlands, Mecklenburg, Portugal. And then we have initiative ratings of real-life generals from all those places, and then the designer's notes. And that is the rule set. So it's 27 pages there, 28 with a bibliography. So 20 pages of actual rules, shall we say, 17 pages without the optional rules, less a few pages for the tables and the index. So you get the picture. It's not too heavy on rules. So I've been waffling a lot. We should probably get down to the action. There was something else I think I needed to say, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. Oh yes, yes, but this isn't it, but this is something else. I haven't put the roads down because I don't have any of the pictures of roads at the moment. But essentially this is the roads net. So if we have the Austrians are here, these are towns, these are forests. So towns, 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 the Austrians are mainly here, these are hills. Road net goes like this as I rolled it, so you can see from town to off-road or off-board or not. And there's actually a river here, which is, interestingly enough, the river would be more or less here. So when the roll came out, it went on and went off on the same quadrant as in the same quadrant. So effectively, I guess the Prussians are forming up behind that river, and the battle will commence once they come over, or at least this deployment, the lunar segment will. So I'll just pause here now and try and recollect myself. Okay, so we'll start with the skirmishes when I move first is essentially these are going to act as a screen. So you have if there's a 2-inch, greater than 2-inch gap between units, then they can be seen through, but otherwise these skirmishes will conceal anything behind them. Now, cavalry 12. Oh, there's no combat in this deployment in this area, so you don't have to worry about these being in column or anything like that. So they're effectively going to screen these. Up the deception. Okay. These skirmishes will move up. And again, these are acting as a screen. That's all right from the other. And we can get this up. So coming up over the hill here, imagine the river, the crossing. Probably should be slowed down. Oh yeah, it's not clear in the rules, but I don't think terrain has effect, so it might, it could do, and I think I could figure it out. But I think it's going to complicate more than against the spirit of these rules. So, now one thing though, although the rough and readiness of movement of these figures is fine, I'm not quite sure if I'm supposed to, if they move, if it's a rigid 12 inches that the cavalry moves, do I go like that and then move there? Or can I go 6 inches there and then 6 inches there? I don't know. I'm not really just place, I don't know how it's normally done. And it might be the spirit of this rule slightly different in this portion than the other, but anyway, I'm doing it like a break of it. So then moving here to screen that third column there. And then you can't see that off camera, I'm just moving these ones that are off board up 5 inches for the musketeers and 12 for the, okay, they're in a line again. I'm not sure if they can sort of come up stacked on top of each other or not. I guess they can because they're off board, so okay. Right, then we've got the new appeared of the. So, skirmish, the defender cannot cross the middle line in this new grid, except for cavalry skirmishers. And the middle line is right down here, and I was using that pointer to illuminate it before. So these ones are going out because they want to find out what's going on around there. They cannot see through these, they cannot see through these, they cannot see through those. So they've moved there. Yeah, I think they wouldn't quite got through that. Anyway, that's what they've done. They can't, okay. Those dragoons want to get on that hill, they can't do it. Okay. So that's all for the Austrians. Off-board deployment. So this is the second round. Oh, yeah, there's no visibility from there. Okay. So, visibility goes out to, they're saying 15 inches, so they're okay. This movement rate is the sort of roughly the movement rate that normally, because the game works sort of by impulses. So a unit has, you roll for initiative, and then you move a unit, which is probably a brigade or a regiment or a battery, and each unit has a number of operations, 2 or 3 or maybe 1, and it's different number depending on the phase, but in the movement fire phase, I think it's 1 operation, and that would be like 4 inches of movement for infantry, and sometimes a +1. So this 5 inches that they're moving now is probably that, represents that. The cavalry, again, each one will be 4 inches, but they get 3 operations in the movement flank. So if they move use all of that, obviously they would move 12 inches. Now, 6 by 6. So these would potentially pin each other, but skirmish units are not pinned, but they block each other's movement. I don't know what the difference between block each other's movement and pinning. I think that means you can. I think essentially what it means is they can't move through you, so you can. So I think. Now I don't know. Am I supposed to move them from the front edge of here? Because it's the thing that kind of. You know what I mean? 3, 9. So if they sort of do a wheel about, they'll be doing that. Not moving. These would come in 5 inches. Okay. So Austrian